Thank you very much for having me today. I am from the Future Generations for Commissioner for Wales's office, and my role in the office is I'm a change analyst. So I work on working with kind of public bodies and public service boards across Mid and West Wales, and I also look at sort of monitoring and assessing work as well. So how well objectives that these bodies set, which I'll go into in a bit more detail, sort of align with the work that we are doing, in particular our Future Generations report. So today, I'm just going to give a sort of overview of the Act and what that means in terms of public service boards and wellbeing plans and how objectives are set and how they should be met. And then I will then go over to kind of give an overview of kind of work or good examples that we've seen where there's been good collaboration between public service boards and with the voluntary sector, so that there'll hopefully be some room for conversation from those, or potentially a bit of inspiration about the ways these we can work together basically. So to begin with, I'll give an overview of the Act. So in a nutshell, the Act, it imposes a duty on specific public bodies to carry out sustainable development. And this is fundamentally the principle that we should be working to the betterment of future generations without compromising the needs and the well-being of the current generations. So when we're looking at wellbeing goals, when we're looking at the 5 ways of working, when we're looking at national indicators and all of these, this is the fundamental principle that we should be working to, and that underlines everything that we're sort of doing. The Act also creates a sort of delivery system. So it's looking at goals, objectives, ways of working. So it's not just sort of output focused, but also looking longer term and also kind of process focused as well, because there's a fundamental belief that the ways of working themselves can deliver sort of mutual outcomes for everyone involved. And it establishes things like a tracking system as well to sort of ensure that the bodies are sort of achieving these. And it sounds quite monitoring heavy, but it's really, we like to see ourselves as a sort of critical friend in these relationships where we're working closely with organisations to help them achieve like the best wellbeing outcomes for themselves, their organisations, and the people they work with the most. It's worth saying that it does apply statutorily, that's probably a word, to public bodies primarily because of devolution. So it can't apply to the private sector and things because that isn't a devolved power. So it's a devolved piece of legislation. This sort of gives an overview of the key role of the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales. So as I was sort of saying, there's a lot of like advice, encouraging and promoting of the Act that we do as an office. So providing advice to public service boards, which I'll go into a bit of detail about what they are and how we work with them in a bit, and public sector organisations to kind of promote how the Act can be embedded in their ways of working. There's a lot of research that we do, so that might be surrounding, and there's a lot of resources, some of which I've linked at the end of this presentation, and I'll share the slides with attendees, or Paminda can after today. But there's a lot of research about, for example, inequalities in a future Wales, about how climate change will be impacting people of different kind of identities and socioeconomic backgrounds. There's the ability to carry out reviews. So this is one of the most substantial powers that we have, and just a month ago we published our review, Section 20 review into Welsh governments, that was reviewing the processes in Welsh government and how they're embedding the Act and what they do. We make recommendations as part of this work, so making recommendations to organisations in terms of how they do their work, and these recommendations must be made. So I'll go into a bit of detail about how that applies to public service boards and the work we've been doing recently. And then every year before there's an assembly election, we also publish a Future Generations report, and that gives a kind of overview of wellbeing in Wales and the ways in which and a series of recommendations on how Welsh Government, public sector and public service boards can be embedding the Act further with the idea that that should inform the next government, the next programme for government. And this is our sort of strategic purpose. So sort of highlighting the big issues, supporting and challenging, working with others, and kind of aiming to walk the talk as well. So we try to embed good working practices, sustainable practices, and things like that we want to see in other organisations too. So in terms of duties and implementation, so as I said, it applies to public bodies and public service boards. So public bodies are kind of listed here. So this includes Welsh Government, local authorities. I won't read them all out, but all the national parks and things. And we work with them on a kind of regional basis generally. So as I said, I cover Mid and West Wales, and then I've got colleagues that cover Gwent, South East Wales and North Wales. Sorry, the sun is really coming through the window there, so it's very bright. But the public service boards are kind of collaboratives between these organisations. So they work generally on a local authority level, but we are seeing more collaborations on a larger scale. So where there's more than one kind of local authority working together. So in North Wales, there's a couple, and Gwent, for example, has got a challenging but really interesting collaboration because they've brought together 5 local authority areas. So what was previously 5 separate PSBs. I'm gonna try and, sorry, the light's really bright. I'm gonna try and pivot my laptop slightly. So the public service boards are sort of collaborations between these organisations on a sort of geographic basis, with the ambition that they deliver change in a sort of place-based manner, setting objectives, steps accordingly. And this might be on areas that they have direct direct oversight of, or it might be areas that they see that they can, they try to have a bit of influence over, so potentially like developing the partnerships and collaboration. This cycle of setting steps and objectives happens every sort of 5 years, and I'll go into a bit of detail here. And this again is just referencing the Sustainable Development Principle, so that I described earlier, but it's just to reinforce that this gets a bit complicated with all the goals and steps and wellbeing objectives, but this is a sort of fundamental principle that we want to see in all the action that public service boards and anyone involved delivers. So when delivering the Act, when setting objectives, public service boards and public bodies must consider these wellbeing goals. So there's 7 goals, and they aren't meant to be sort of in opposition together. The idea is that they work together to create the Wales we want. I won't go into a huge amount of detail what they mean, but things like a globally responsible Wales, that could be sort of collaborative work internationally in terms of like developing learnings on innovative ways to fight climate change, but it also might relate to the role that public service boards or public bodies have in kind of welcoming refugees, and sort of taking stock of the role that Wales has in a global context. A healthier Wales is probably quite self-explanatory. More equal Wales, that kind of aligns directly with the Equality Act, as well as looking at things like poverty and socio sort of economic background. And yeah, I won't go into all of these, but we can talk about these. I just know it'll go on. I don't want to go over time, but they're all really important. And the idea is that they kind of work together. So we've got, decoupling economic growth from carbon emissions, for example. And this is sort of a big focus of our work is around the 5 ways of working. So when looking at these goals, when setting objectives, the public bodies and public service boards should be considering these 5 ways of working when they're setting their steps. So the steps are the sort of building blocks that help you achieve an objective. It might be a bit more specific, but these are really significant. So the idea is that these 5 ways of working sort of ensure that the process is undertaken by local authorities and the public sector and public service boards, it ensures sustainable development because it's going to be longer lasting, basically. So the idea is that we look long term. So we're not just thinking in the short term. It's preventative, so looking at how preventing problems from getting worse. So this might be kind of climate change mitigation, for example, or looking at the social determinants of health, not just health outcomes. Integration, so this is how well different public bodies' wellbeing objectives might integrate across other areas. So using the health example again, this might be looking at health outcomes from a social perspective and looking at how the environment, so like access to green space and so access to green space might contribute to better health outcomes, as well as like preserving that green space is an important sort of environmental issue. So it's really looking at things in a kind of integrated manner. Collaborations, that's sort of the purpose of today, just kind of looking at how working together can improve these outcomes for people. So it's making sure that not only are we utilising the most, all the skills and talent that there is in Wales to help deliver the Act, but also ensuring that, we're not duplicating what's already happening, not reinventing the wheel when, we know that there's so many organisations across Wales doing things in a slightly different or more innovative way. So it's just like learning and helping to work together that way. And then the involvement principle is also really significant, I think, in terms of today's presentation, because it's all about involving people who have an interest in achieving the goals, but making sure that citizens are empowered to be in decision-making processes, that citizens understand the Act, that importantly, people who might not traditionally be in these positions of power or are in like more marginalized backgrounds, that they're kind of put to the forefront. So as is the importance of representation in loads of levels, making sure that these wellbeing goals, objectives are delivering to the people with the most need and not reinforcing any existing inequalities. So moving on to public service boards. So as I was explaining, these public service boards are sort of collaboratives that happen across sort of one or more sort of local authority level, and they must sort of geographic area, and they must conduct local assessments of wellbeing at least 1 year before the plans. I'm going to move on to the next slide actually, because it's a bit less word heavy. So every 5 years there's a sort of cycle, well, not really a cycle, but this pathway that public service boards must take, where, so last year public service boards were drafting and publishing their wellbeing assessments, and this is a really substantial piece of research that looks into the state of wellbeing in their area, any particular strengths, any particular challenges that they should be focusing on over the next 5 years and even longer term than that. There's a sort of public consultation, and the Wellbeing Office is a statutory respondent to that. After that, the PSBs go away and start drafting their wellbeing plans and their objectives, and there's a sort of 14-week advice period where the office and the public service boards kind of work together in refining those objectives, and then that's into a public consultation, of which Carmarthenshire is out at the moment. So I'd really encourage everyone to go and respond to that. And then the final plans are kind of refined on the back of this public consultation and involvement, are published in May 2023, and then there's delivery, and this will include this will be delivering the plans obviously, but then there's a level of like annual reviews, embedding the 5 ways of working, and then we'll be there as these sort of named contacts there to provide advice as well to the PSB as and when. So I hope that I'll clear up anything in the question and answers in a bit, but I think it's important to go over these sort of 5 ways of working and the importance of the voluntary sector here. I've put involvement at the top because I think this is the area of which there's the most potential and the most sort of added value for everyone here. It's a real opportunity, I think, for the Public Service Board to improve the outreach to citizens is by engaging with the voluntary sector. And this isn't just about, I think traditionally it can be seen as public consultation or an area where citizens might be engaged in like a one-off meeting and then maybe nothing much happens, or the citizens like don't really see what the benefit of this. But the idea is actually developing kind of longer term. I mean, we've got the co-production network here today, so I won't overstep their mark here, but all about kind of empowering citizens to include them in decision-making processes in a long-term basis, or and as I said, making sure like marginalized voices are heard when decisions are being had, but not just in decision-making processes, but also including them in the design. So there's been some examples where there's been like participatory budget setting by like local authorities working with the voluntary sector, and those sorts of things are not just important in terms of the outcomes it has for citizens, but also the process is really meaningful for people too. Collaboration, so working across sectors and policy areas to find kind of mutual areas of progress, and importantly kind of break down any sort of power differentials. Like the last thing we want is there to be a sort of I don't know, we just want these relationships to be as kind of mutually beneficial as possible, and kind of recognizing that sometimes different organizations have different cultural ways of working or different language that they use, but the more that we can undo these and kind of like look towards mutual goals, which I think the Wellbeing Act pretty much encompasses, then there can be real added value from the duties of the local authority to the PSB through to the kind of innovative work that voluntary sector is often doing, and kind of unique insights there. Integration, as it says here, the voluntary sector are really well placed to help public bodies understand how different wellbeing issues might intersect with each other. They're working on the ground, like you're working on the ground, how a particular green space or park or something might, or access to a town hall or a community asset might be impacting people, and therefore it's just like really important to have those insights. And then prevention and long term, again, it's all about insights and data really, but it's all about just understanding what the long term and preventative aspects are here for the plans to work towards. So I've just got a couple of examples here really of some like interesting ways that we've seen some collaboration. So in Pembrokeshire, there's the Pembrokeshire Pride Award. So this is looking at, and it's just an awards that it happens like every 2 months, and the Public Service Board looks at the voluntary sector and community groups in the area and kind of awards, does a lot of recognition. So the community group and everything that they're working towards gets an article in the local newspaper. The judging criteria is kind of based on the 5 ways of working, so it aligns directly with the Act, and it's just a way to kind of like celebrate and promote the work of community groups in the area. And there's a cash prize as well, which never hurts really, especially in this economy. Then there's a Compact Flintshire, which is a kind of collaboration between kind of the public sector and the voluntary sector. So this diagram sort of outlines how that's happening, and as well as kind of promoting partnership working and like working together on strategies and promoting citizen voices in decision making and things. It also oversees a funding code to kind of ensure that there's fairer treatment by funders towards the voluntary sector, and that it aligns with the public sector priorities. So there's no duplication of what's already happening, and it involves members in the work that they do. So there's a kind of involvement, democratic element to that as well. Audit Wales specifically noted this. Audit Wales did a big review about the way that the public sector and voluntary sector are working together across Wales. And they specifically noted that a kind of clear, transparent methodology on funding has been really beneficial for both the voluntary sector in terms of their ability to work with the public sector, but also in terms of the outcomes that were seen as a result. This is an example. So the Food Fail project that's been going on. So there's a lot of partners listed in this collaboration with the overall, they're all signed up to a charter which fundamentally works on kind of building a thriving, healthy and sustainable food system. Food being one of the areas that NRW have highlighted as a key area for change in terms of delivering sustainable development. And in terms of the five ways of working, it clearly sits in the middle of environmental well-being in terms of carbon emissions, health, social well-being in terms of people having access to a healthy diet, kind of inequalities and poverty. We're all aware of the challenges facing people in Wales affording food at the moment. And also kind of something that was noted was it's not just about the outcomes for residents in terms of accessing food. Obviously, this is really important, but in terms of bringing people together in a community spirits, there's been a lot of social benefits as well. So really integrated both well-being outcomes and like processes, if that makes sense. So it's just like the way that they've been doing this has been really beneficial for people as well. And this is just one project, the Lantwick Food Project, but there's several listed on their website. And I think if I haven't included a link at the end of this presentation, I'll include one. I can share one around. But these are just a few examples of ways that we've been working with that the public sector's been working with the voluntary sector. And I hope these are just a few resources. But other than that, I think I'm at the end of my slides. I hope I'm not horribly over time, but please, any questions would be great. Thank you.